Hey guys, it's Baileywiki and welcome to the July 2023 release. Foundry Basic subscribers are going to love the expansion of all the systems that you've seen this year, including the new modular rooms and even an entire multi-level castle that comes either as a prefab for dropping into scenes or it's already built into some ready-made scenes for you. Also new overlay effects, new Michael Gelfi ambient sounds, tons of new stuff. We've also got some really cool new 3D assets for Foundry Advanced subscribers. So you can now make some very compelling cemeteries. And we've made a couple for you. And if you haven't checked out what 3D Canvas is capable of these days, check out my playlist for it. It's quite compelling. And when you see the scenes we built for you, you can imagine what kind of game session you could unleash on your players. And finally, Dungeondraft subscribers get the first big expansion of the new terrain system I introduced last month, this time with lots of special new terrains for painting and details, great new cave paths, new interior textures, new pillars, and lots of new laboratory assets. And also a huge sample map that contains all of the artwork from this release actually used, so you can see how I made things, how I designed them, and then you can reverse engineer them and make your own modifications yourself. One thing to mention about GMs who are deciding to whether to move into Foundry V11 or not, if you are not on D&D 5e, then prefabs are currently broken. So we're hoping for a fix soon, but if you need prefabs to work and you are not on D&D 5e, so you're on Pathfinder or something else, we recommend you wait until we tell you. It should be in the next few days if you're watching this on the release date, which is July 3rd, 2023. If you're watching this well after that date, then it's probably been resolved by now. So that's it for the flyover. Let's jump in. So first off, where you find everything is obviously the 3D Baileywiki module is getting updates. Next one is going to be landing pages, just a really small one. It's a Michael Gelfi loop for Gothic landing pages, which is really nice. Check that out. Then also Baileywiki Maps Premium and Towns. These are the two, if you're on Forge, that don't count against your quota, but both of them are getting updates. And then the City District 5 Affluent, that's where the new castle can be located. And then finally, there are some new macros associated with Baileywiki Nuts and Bolts. You can download that for free anytime. It just involves new overlay filters, which I'll show you here in just a second. To see all the new content for prefabs, just open Prefab New Content, and you'll find them all here under Furnishings and Modular Buildings. And you'll also find content in both the Baileywiki Maps Town scenes and just Baileywiki Maps Premium scenes. Okay, let's walk through the inventory scenes first. This is the laboratory rooms. These are some great rooms. They've got a ton of detail. They're using a bunch of new textures and other things from Dungeondraft and from our Dungeondraft set, so you can see how they work, including like these really kind of intricate pipes. These are just paths that you can use to lay down these pipes really quickly. And then, of course, these tanks. So some of the things to point out with these tanks, if they are matte enabled, so if you double click it, you can actually change the color inside the tank. It changes both the light and the color of the tile inside the tank to give it that nice color. You can see we've also got all these different experiment specimens. If I double right click it and open up its artwork, you can see I've got other experiment types here that you can just quickly go in and swap them out, or of course just put your own tokens in there. Or you can also just associate these with some other actor in your sidebar and give them all the stats of that actor. I can't just right click it though. I can also, double click. I can also right click and it changes the type of tank. Depends on how much you want to see of the interior, that kind of thing. You can move these. Once you release all of the attachments, you can move these specimen out of the tanks. And you notice you can also hear some of that gurgling water. These rooms all do have doors and walls, and of course they come with these kind of floating doors where your players can go underneath them, and you can then move these doors to other places. You can get rid of the door, that sort of thing. You can even change those doors to different varieties. Here's another room with plenty of detail, and it's kind of subtle detail. There's some Tom Kartos artwork in here. Here's more of these vats. This one is a little bit bigger in case you want to put a bigger baddie in there. And they all work the same way. I can right click and change the tops. I can even change it to a top that is not transparent. And you can even change the colors. Next, we have another laboratory. This one's got more things to explore, plenty of places to put some discoveries for your players. And then, of course, there's this surgery room where you've got more tanks in here that you can play around with as far as having things spawn out of. Keep in mind also that all of these, if you right-click them, there is a blank version. So if you want to decorate these in some other way or just use them in some other dungeon, you certainly can. Here's the gallery, and it does come in a plain version. But what I added here to the gallery is, so it's got all of these paintings, and you can see it's got these active tiles here. And when you click on them, they open up an image and put a caption in there. You can change that image and caption just by clicking into it, going into your triggers. See, anyone can click on it, and you can change the image that you want it pointing to, and then change the caption here as well. And it'll just open for the triggering player, so you don't have a bunch of chaos with players opening things for other players. All of these doors are movable, and you can change them out, rearrange them in different ways. And then this last hallway, can always use more hallways. This goes well with all of the other modular systems, and there's just a couple of different versions of it. The tanks themselves come in prefabs. There's either one with the experiment in it, this is the experiment, or one without the experiment in it. Just place it where you want. You can then move it around, and when you're done, you can release the prefab, right? By clicking this trash can, you can't undo it. Although you can reform the prefab. But these all work the same way. They're all can be right-clicked to change their tops, and they can be double-clicked to change their colors. Also, we have new overlay macros in Nuts and Bolts. These are taking the overlays that I created for Dungeondraft and bringing them over here as well. They're really great. You can create rubble and these more intricate vines and cracks. They look really good when you put them onto a tile. So we have vines 3. And of course, you can move these around and zoom in and out and things like that. But they're really effective for making something look overgrown. I also have cracks 8. Again, you can zoom in and out to make these cracks look just like what you want them to. You can even turn down their opacity if you want to make it not so sharp. We also have these great new rubble textures. Once you put them in, you can edit them and give them a tint. So we want to colorize. We want to make them something like, in fact, we'll just pick up this blue color here. It's gray blue, a little bit lighter. There we go. Very effective for taking something that looks clean and just adding some rubble to it. Finally, we've got some ambient music or ambient loops from Michael Gelfi. Given some of the maps that I've created here, those are super effective for just creating ambience. They really kind of layer well with other things too, so you might want to experiment with that. Here's the Trebor Castle sample scene so you can learn what it does. If you're ever also curious, you can go into the Trebor Castle biography and you can read about all the things that it does here if you want a little cheat sheet on what you can do as a GM. It should all be reflected in the scene as well. But you can see we've got ruined and clean versions of the castle. Players can interact with all of these different pieces. The gates are broken in this ruined version, but they can come up here to the ramparts, continue fighting up here. You can see some of the overlay filters in play here. On this first level, we have this hidden staircase. Your players can go, there's underground portions for them as well. Here's another hidden staircase, which you can decide in your game what you want players to see. Those are only activatable by the GM. And then we also have this tile here. This is a background tile, so you have to get to your background tiles. And you can change this statue to something else, but when you click it, it will expose this hidden door up here. Basically change that for you. All of these rooms, your players can go in, and these towers are climbable, so your players can come up here, for example. And now they're in the upper floor of this room. And then to get to the very top, they can come up here. These top pieces do change. You can basically hide or unhide this. It's just a brazier underneath if you don't want to have the ballista showing. And also on the second floor, this is the tallest tower. Your players can come in and out from this trap door. But just to show you what's happening on this level, you can right-click it and you can change it to other things. So if you want a little plot twist, or you want one of these rooms to be occupied or something else, you can certainly do that. This might work better in the version that's dressed, but that's what that's there for. And then you do have some rooms back here in the back that your players can discover things, right? So they can click on this, remove this tile. You can right-click this tile and turn it into something else, depending on what you'd like to do. And otherwise, plenty of space for skirmishes and discovering things. You do have the dressed version. And a little bit of an Easter egg here. All of these versions do also have a blank version. So you can see if I right-click it, there's this blank version that you can decorate yourself with anything you'd like. Both come as prefabs, which you can find here. There's the ruined and then the regular dressed version of it. Now we're putting the castle into different environments. So this is the keep in the Nine Hills. You can read about what it does and generally how it works, but this is just an example to show you how prefabs can work with all of these different backgrounds and these interesting AI environments. Castle by the Ruins features the ruins map that you may have seen before, now with a castle laid into it. This one happens to be in ruins. And of course you have this interactive fire here, which you can left click to snuff out, or you can right click to change the configuration of the fire to whatever you're trying to achieve. Here we have the same castle now laid up on a cliff. Got some really delightful ambient sounds. A lot of these sounds change based on whether you're day or nighttime, but you can see some of the aesthetic changes that I've applied to this just to give you a little bit of a variation and see what other things you can do here. You do have to create your own teleports. With the transition to V11 from V10, amongst active tiles, depends on which version you're running, teleports are working or not. So I just decided to opt to let you put your own teleports in. Plus, I didn't want to put too many teleports baked in because they might send you to the same place and you'll get tokens lost and that kind of thing. If you do see this symbol right here, if you click on it, it will take you back to the schematic for the castle in case you need to reference back to it. Now, if we venture underneath the castle, we can come here to the castle dungeon dressed or the ruined version. That hidden staircase brings you down here. The other one that you access through a secret passage gets you this way. And then you've got that hidden staircase in that sanctuary area. These are all things that you can change. You can change this from this statue to a different one or something entirely different. It's got a square tile, so a lot of things work in that place. And then your players can discover this secret entrance to this cave. And as they're navigating through the cave, which features a bunch of the new AI stuff in Dungeondraft, they're finding this nefarious pile of bones. And they can continue, if you decide you don't want the boss fight here, you want it later on, they can continue through the cave, and you can leverage some of the other cave systems to expose what they find. The ruined version is just that. This is a version that has been unoccupied. Notice you do have some tiles that you can use for teleportation here. You got some more hidden components if you want to use them. And we've changed the statue here in this case and applied a filter to it, an overlay. If you do want to continue the battle, you can bring them down through the subterranean passage where it empties out into this mushroom cave. These are tiles that you can move around and recolor. And then you have some interesting elevation changes here to help with creating, interesting battle. This does use elevated tokens, or elevated vision, I'm sorry. So as your players climb this cave, they can climb up further to the top. Here's another one that you could have come immediately after that first cave and then continue down further. This also involves elevated vision. You can see we're climbing up to this narrow path here, and then down below we see enemies. We've got some effects going on, and just pointing out some of these brushes that you can use in Dungeondraft can be quickly changed to other kinds of brushes. This map was incredibly fast to make, so I encourage any of you who are using Dungeondraft to check it out. Coral Shores gives you a nice day and night feeling. You can go either inside this hut or out on the shores. You can see the moon reflecting off the water. If we look really closely, under this moon tile is another tile for a treasure chest. I recommend you put it on in day and nighttime to see how they change. Fire Shores is a relatively simple map. The idea is your players try to make their way over to this forge that's sitting out in the lava. It's the only thing left of a dwarven forge that was claimed by this lava flow. But just different ideas for how you might design your own stuff in the future. And if you go to edit filters, you can see some of the filters that I use to make some of these statues look more like they were intended for the scene. Floating Isles is a fun map. You can see, if I pause here for a second, that these clouds are slowly rotating underneath. We've got a very good ambient sound. We've got some rooms we can populate, but you can delete these. These are just prefabs, and you can put other ones in their place. But the lighting and the sound design here, I think, is going to be really intriguing to your players. And, a lot of these pieces are just, these are pieces that you can move around, change, and do other things with. I recommend you look at some of the components that make this scene what it is, because you can get a lot of creativity to it. If you ever want to put something else over this background itself is just a tile. And it's got tile scroll from Ripper activated. Laboratory is a collection of all the laboratory pieces put together with a couple of other pieces. Right here's some modular cells. Maybe that's where your players start. You can have them start here in these tanks, or they get in here and they have a battle with some creatures that escape from it. Here they move into the next room, and you can see I'm using some other pieces. Like this is just a bloodstain, and it's just colorable, right? Using the Dungeondraft filter, and it's just colored the same color as the tanks to really make it look like something escaped from the tanks. You can even see there's a overlay filter applied. It's the cracks filter, and they're just colored white. So it takes your black cracks, colors them white, and makes it look like that tank was damaged. Here we are in the gallery. You'll have to apply your own images here. If you need an egress point, we've got one here that's got an active tile there that you can recode. And then you've seen some of this other stuff now just put together in a way that your players can explore it. And I did use a lab from the last release, just to show you that these things all interconnect together. Here's a nice simple map, relatively small in size. it's got this tree in the middle that can be moved around or deleted or rotated to give your players something more interesting to traverse. All of these trees are overhead tiles, and they were painted with the fall colors painter, and you can see details here on the map. River of Fire is another map that's just important to know about because you can take this and customize it in lots of different ways. Here I just dropped in one of the orcish towers that you could have your players or your enemies occupy. Your players can shoot from up above. It is a working tower. They can go down to the lower level, go into the tower itself, and there's sleeping quarters and other things here. All of these things are movable though, so you can delete this or change this bridge, and you can also see what filters are applied to see why the bridge has things like drop shadows and other things that you might find helpful when you're designing. Almost done. We've got the spider hole. This is to show off some of the new textures as well that are available in Dungeondraft. You can see it was very quick to create this map with all these assets. Your players can venture under this area of the spider hole. You can also hide enemies and things like that. You've got other overhead tiles around that are very effective for hiding things. It's got a great Michael Gelfi backdrop to it. And just to show how you can transform these things, this is the same general map, but using a different set of brushes in Dungeondraft and a couple of props to basically come up with something totally different, right? Maybe there's a fungal queen that lives in this particular map versus the spider map. Okay, so that's it for the Foundry basic content. Let's jump over to the Foundry advanced stuff.
Hi guys, Swift here. This month we've got a set of props all made to be used together to create cemeteries of any size, with a lot of variety in there in order to create different styles of map, from well-maintained necropoli to crumbling graveyards. There's also several nature props in here too, that fit on pretty much any map, so let's quickly go through them. Starting at the back over here, we've got a set of mausoleums, from smaller ones made of wood to these more kind of ornate Gothic stone ones. Aside from this one in the middle, they don't have interiors, though you could use Monk's active tile triggers to use the doors as teleporters to go down to dungeon scenes and that sort of thing, so these are quite versatile that way. Below that, we've got the graves themselves, and generally these will be what dictates how important a cemetery you're creating, how important it looks. Like these ornate stone sarcophagi back here will have presumably important figures in them, whereas these wooden ones here would be better for like a site near a recent battle, and are probably temporary constructions, obviously, since they're made of wood. Over here we've got the larger stone grave markers, which are probably quite suitable for like a cenotaph or a lone grave, due to their more kind of squared off shape. And then over here we've got the very classic gravestone shapes here. Got a couple of different ones, and then some with a kind of taller base as well. And of course in the middle we have just some stone pots with, well, rather dried out looking plants in there. Below the graves we have some structural elements. For example, these retaining wall type structures for making like tiered maps. You've got lower terrain on one part and then higher terrain behind them, and then some stairs to go with them that are the same height, so that'll match up. We've also got various different types of wall. Some of these will snap together on the grid on their own, though several of them are intended to be used along with these brick pillars. For instance, if I copy this one here, and then copy it over to the side, there's a gap in the middle there, but that's what this stone pillar here is for. There we go. So you can make fences of any length using this sort of fence pillar setup. We've also got more kind of plain stone walls here, and then the kind of crumbling, broken down walls. These obviously don't really snap together so much, but if you put like these kind of walls here in a line along where a wall used to be, that'll be pretty good at kind of giving the impression of an ancient site that is fading away. over on the right here are the natural props, starting with these rocks here. We've always got requests for more variety on the rocks that are in the collection here. So we've got various different sizes and shapes here. The different sizes are quite useful because they all have the same resolution texture on them, so they all match up as long as they're kind of this size, relative to each other at least. Rocks in general are pretty useful for either covering up bits of terrain that look a little bit jank, or covering up ways that the party isn't going to go, or maybe just for, filling in places that look a bit empty. Next up on the vegetation front, we've got a set of bushes and undergrowth, along with some mushrooms over here and some vines. So basically smaller kind of plants to scatter around any area with vegetation for a bit more detail. That can really help to kind of bring life to your maps. And then we've got the trees themselves. Aside from a pair of tree trunks here, a lot of these trees are coming in pairs. For instance, these two here. We've got one tree without any leaves on it at all, a kind of wintry looking or dead tree. And then we've got the same tree but with leaves, which means that you can replace these one for one with each other. So you could, for instance, do a transition between a autumnal scene and a winter scene, for instance. Or, of course, just use them to flesh out a forest that you're creating. Beyond these smaller trees, we do, of course, have the larger trees as well. A lot of them with mushrooms growing on the trunks. And again, a lot of them in pairs with leafed and leafless versions. Several of those there. And then at the back here are a bunch of trees that are standalone trees. So we've got a few different styles of kind of evergreen-looking trees, a more densely leafed tree, I suppose. I don't know what the correct word for that would be. As well as a couple of these sort of taller conical trees. I've also got something that I'd like to show people. The first time you spawn out these trees, you'll likely notice, like this one over here, that the shadows are quite blocky. If the shadows aren't really visible, then obviously this isn't really a problem. But if you've got this in the middle of a scene, say, and you'd really like the shadows to be accurate, then what you can do is go into the 3D tab of an object, go into Configure Shaders, and apply the Wind shader to them. And then you can see the shadows then become accurate to the actual branches of the tree. If you want it to remain static, you can set the speed and intensity to 0, and then it will just be a static tree with accurate shadows. So there is a hot tip for you there. Anyway, that is a brief overview of the assets we have this month, props rather. Let's have a quick look at some of the maps that we have this month. To start off, we've got a lot of those graveyard props. Let's use them to make a graveyard, of course. This map here is using just props from this month's release, though the terrain itself is a custom piece. We've got a road travelling along the south side of the map, and then a gate leading into this kind of classic misty graveyard. The mist is one of the VFX that's built into 3D canvas. That's a great job on Ripper's part there. And something I've done with this map is carried on with my habit of making use of non-diegetic lights to show people how easy it is to kind of enhance your maps with just a few extra lights here. Like, for instance, the scene is mainly lit in a kind of dark blue, but for things like this cross here, or those mausoleums over there, or the mausoleum up on the hill, I've put a small green light nearby to kind of highlight them and make them not quite so dark, while still making them appear to be a natural part of the scene. Beyond the graveyard, we've got a road leading off-map to the left here, and then we've got the mausoleum on top of the hill, surrounded by the fence there, or this could be a stand-in for a very small chapel, for instance. And then we also have a dirt path leading off into the woods, kind of deep, dark area over there, with a small clearing there where something might be lurking in wait for the players, or where the players might enter the scene from. Overall, this map is pretty useful for any sort of spooky situation. Obviously perfect for, this classic necromancer encounter with the zombies and skeletons and such. And something we've also done is created a daytime version of this map, just to kind of show how different a scene can look with different lighting. So let's have a quick look at that. And this here is the same map, just in the daytime. So this is just mainly a demonstration of the different types of lighting you can really get here. the mist has obviously been cleared away, the green lights have been removed, and everything's a lot more kind of brighter and more towards yellows and greens than they were previously. It obviously looks rather less threatening like this, though I could obviously still see this being quite useful depending on the adventure you're running, like, say, a small cemetery on a quaint town here, and perhaps the party is visiting during the day to have a talk with the keeper, or maybe they need to find the grave of a specific person by following some sort of mystery, for instance. But let's look into the next map. This next map here I'm calling the Necromantic Temple, using those retaining wall type props to create a kind of tiered structure here. This map is rather more kind of direct and straightforward. We've got this tiered temple type structure with some stairs leading up the middle here, and then rows of sarcophagi along the top. I think this map would be perfect as some sort of boss arena, or the location of a ritual that the party is trying to interrupt, or of course a ritual that the party is trying to complete, for instance. Up at the top here we've got a larger sarcophagus with a movable lid for whatever creature to crawl out of. Though of course I always encourage people to modify any of these maps. They are all made from tiles, like everything else. So, say, get rid of this sarcophagus here and put a ritual circle up here, or some ancient rune stone, or a large portal. Really, this sort of map is great for anything that kind of seems important with its big central location. Something else I feel that 3D Canvas can be quite effective at is big end-of-adventure type scenes, since you can just turn 3D mode on and off with the push of a button. Something that might be interesting is running your adventures as normal on 2D maps, and then for big confrontations or important moments, having a 3D scene like this set up to really make an impression, since you can just use this for one scene, or even just part of one scene. Similarly to the other map, I've also included a daytime version of this map. Again, it's a very simple transition, though I thought this might be useful in cases where the players have actually managed to crash the party early. Maybe they reach the Necromancer's lair during the day before he's had time to prepare in order to secure an advantage. Or maybe this isn't really anything necromantic at all. It's just a strategically useful structure that's been occupied by brigands or orcs or the like, and attacking during the day when people are out raiding would be tactically advantageous. Next up is a collection of winter-themed maps by Violet. Snowy and icy environments are a favourite of mine, so I rather like these. This one here is the Boreal Lake Valley. We've got a frozen lake here surrounded by these trees and jagged cliffs, and along the shoreline there's this mysterious structure buried under the snow. And of course this rather conspicuous giant stone head. Structures like this are a fantasy staple I really think we need more of, like impossible structures or sculptures, or just generally evidence of advanced ancient civilizations. Anyway, this map here could be used as a cave entrance by using mat, of course, similar to previous maps we've used in the past. But we also have this very large flat area out front thanks to the ice. So having a battle on an icy surface sounds like the kind of thing that could be interesting here. You've got slippy or difficult terrain, risks of breaking through into the frozen waters below, or just a large flat battlefield. I also like the idea of using a map like this as the background for a landing page type scene. Like, say, with a fixed camera here, with the players arranged with the interactable, clickable objects, and then just this mysterious giant head in the background. Next up in this set is the Boreal Crevasse, which is a bit of a classic treacherous crossing situation. We've got rushing water down below amidst sharp rocks, and a snowy, icy, rocky surface up here. There is a pass along the mountainside that wraps around back there. And then, of course, this bridge crossing the river that surely is entirely stable. Over on the other side, we've got a bit of tactical interest here. Round the back of this cliff on the right is a pathway up it, made using these rocks here, leading to a position from which someone can throw arrows down onto the party, or similar. And then on the left, we also have a very climbable-looking series of rocks that lead up to the top of this plateau here, which could be the destination that the players are trying to reach, or just the location of someone else who's trying to impede. Overall, this map's got a fair few nooks and crannies scattered about, and it's definitely useful for a variety of scenes, I think. The last map we'll be looking at today is the Ice Serpent Cliffs, and you'll probably see quite quickly why I called it that. These coiling formations around the map. This one's a rather interesting one by Violet, and it's one of those maps where the use case could vary wildly from campaign to campaign. These ice serpents could be actual entities that the party is trying to find to maybe defeat in battle or communicate with, or they could be merely ancient sculptures from some ancient past that could be used to climb up these cliffs here, since they reach all the way down to the ground. Or something I actually think would be rather cool to see would be having a battle on top of these, since they are quite large, but obviously very narrow bridges here, so when the movement abilities come out and people start trying to shove each other off, that could lead to some very clutch tactical moments. Anyway, that'll do for a quick overview today. As ever, I do appreciate your feedback on these props and the maps. You can get in touch either in the comments below or on Discord or all the usual places. And let us know what you think. I'll see you later.
For part of the Dungeondraft release, you get this entire new scene, and you can see there's a lot of layers and things to this scene. There's a perfect thing for you to come in here and dress up your own castle, or change the decisions I made for dressing the castle, and make whatever modifications that you want. I do use the sort of green screen effect here, and what that means is that when you come into your terrain brushes, you can see all the terrain brushes that are applied, showing you a bunch of the new brushes that are available right now. If you go into base assets, you can navigate through and see a lot of them in here. And pick the ones that you like and change the brushes, and you can see the effect that it has on the overall map. You've also got some new components like these pillars that are colorable and super flexible. This is an example of that. This was just one that was blown up to a larger size. But you'll find that you can use these in a lot of different environments, and they work really, really great together. We're also using some of the new overlays. So that is a new piece. These vines are new overlays. And so, between those and all these interior textures, you've got a lot to play with. You notice here we're using some of the new crack patterns, and, here's some of the rubble patterns. Super effective for creating the kind of detail that you want to create. I use these scenes to be able to create cutouts later of what I want to do. I found it makes it easier just to make sure that I'm cutting out these pieces, because I want them to occlude in certain ways when I pull them into Foundry. More pieces that you can come in here and create your own. Feel free to do cannons or something else. These red roofs are colorable both in Dungeondraft, but if you keep them red, then they're also colorable in Foundry. We've got our dressed versions and other things. This is a special scene. It's meant to work with this scene here. So if we compare levels and we put these templates underneath it, then we can see how these are going to work together when we finally export all of them. Feel free to come in here and make more options. There's a very ruined version. Now we get to the caves. Lots of really good stuff in here. These paths, they are all paths, and they're set up in a way with different opacities for you to be able to basically draw your cave walls. I recommend playing around with making them larger or smaller. They're very, very great for designing caves in, I think, new and interesting ways, right? And you can see them if you look for irregular. You can see all these different cave paths. Notice I changed that path there when I selected that one. These are all just little cave paths that you can just draw in place, fade the ends of them, and you can create very compelling changes in elevation. Even these stalagmites are all just cave paths that were just linked together, right? So really quickly make interesting things that, look really custom. You can also, just as a little trick, if you're going to create stalactites, you want to go to a dark color like this and paint shadow onto one side, right? If it's all one shade, it loses its three-dimensionality, right? So we want to paint shadows onto one side, and that makes it look like it's three-dimensional. But remember, these are all just paints. So if we want this, instead of skulls to be, I don't know, crystals, we can change that, and all of a sudden we have, you know, a big mess of crystals there. Or we can change it to other kinds of backgrounds. Here's pebbles, right? So you can really, really quickly change these and make entirely new creations. Here's some mushrooms, right? There's also roots, which look really great when they're put up against the side of the walls. Webs is another good one that you just paint right in. You also got different kinds of fog on top of all these new types of artificial floors. Here's our dressed version that you can make modifications to. And then here's a great one that you can see how these new ocean pieces work together. So you see all the different varieties I'm using here, but you can really just paint in some nice coral underneath you know, some of these ocean textures, and it works really, really well. You just get this coral popping, makes it seem like it's shallow in some areas. I recommend you come in here and just play around with these brushes and see how I made these different things. But you can see it started as just one big rocky palette, and then actually started as this ocean scene, and then we just modified it using these other brushes until we got a nice, you know, diagonal shoreline with, you know, a good mix of like a rocky area where we can put prefabs and things like that, and then what we've got in the ocean. Here's another cave, just to show you more of what's possible. A lot of the other techniques, you can see the roots being used here. You can see these skeletons being peppered in here and there. And then again, like before, just putting in these geodes instead of, you know, skulls. Right? All of a sudden now we have skulls. We might change the lighting in here, but it's that easy to change these things around. You know, now we've got fire. We could just as easily do mushrooms or something else in their place. And again, more of these painted on brushes where you can change these to other types of things. And then just play around with all these different paths, right? Rearrange this, make the elevations change in a different way. This one's the same map, just with different textures and just some modifications to show you how quickly you can change these, right? If I turn on my terrain brush, you can see the brushes I used here and how those differ from the brushes I used here. Here's a simple shoreline to show you how these work. These are, of course, also paths that you have available. You just basically paint your shoreline so that it's roughly together, and then you put a path over the top of it. And then you can pepper in some, you know, like if I have this sand at a relatively low intensity, I can paint in underneath here and make it look like there's shallow, you know, sand just under the water there. But you can see the creativity, you can get really a lot of different kinds of terrains and textures all together here. Just more examples of what you can put together. When you blend all of these, you can see what went into making this particular scene. And then we get to the spider hole, which just uses a lot of paints here. We're using a solid black paint, and we're, you know, very lightly creating these kind of like outcroppings as you get further and further down. If I wanted to make this look like it had a bottom, for example, I would just very lightly paint in some more rock here, and it just gives us the feeling like you can actually see the bottom now. And then all of these components can be changed. These are all just brushes, you know, the webs, the skulls that can be turned into, you know, something else really quickly. If you wanted that many crystals, probably not. Here's pebbles. Mushrooms. Cool, right? More of the scenes that you saw in the Foundry release, again, come in here and you can see how they were created. And then we get to our laboratories, and you can come in here and make your modifications to the laboratories as well. This is using a lot of the assets that we've created for you that Sepher will show you now in the inventory scenes.
Also in Dungeondraft, the Baileywiki Assets APAC has a collection of new objects for you to use for decorating your maps. We'll start first with the new paintings and frames. There are 5 different painting frames that you can use. They come in an empty angled version for up against a wall. We have a mirrored version, top down, and a flat version. And of course, all of these are completely colorable. So you can make them whatever color you would like. The reason why these are empty is because we also have a variety of paintings provided as well. We like this solution better than having solid objects for all of these, because this way we can keep down the total object count. Simply set these to be underneath your frames, and these will work for a variety of the different framing options. You may need to adjust the size or turn off the snap to grid in order for these to line up perfectly, but they do work quite well for all of these different pieces. For the flat paintings, you'll notice that there are no flat objects. Instead, we have pattern shapes here, and these are for each of the paintings. Notice that this says like landscape 3x2, so that's going to be the width times the height. The easiest way to use these is have your snap to grid on and draw out the pattern shape in 3x2. You can also check for where it is, as all of these are going to tile in the same places. If you can find the exact corners, then you can start over in a corner and then draw that shape out. But starting in the top left corner will always get you a perfect pattern. Once you have the pattern that you want, you can use the scaling ability of the select tool to get this closer to an approximate size for one of these empty frames. Then you'll probably want to turn off your snap to grid. It's as simple as going back to your pattern shape tool and editing the points so that you can adjust this. And as you can see, it's actually quite easy to get these flat versions of the paintings ready for your maps. We're also excited to see what other creative uses you can come up with for these painting patterns. So let us know of all of your cool ideas and interesting executions. There's also a bit of an industrial theme to the different assets here, and so we have a variety of new pipe pieces. There are 5 different pipe paths, and you can find these in your paths tool. At this point, there's so many paths that you might want to just search for them, but we have the pipeline, which is this more complex version, and we also have a variety of pipes that are going to be down towards the bottom. You can use these to create your own pipe pieces, as we've done here with all of these new pipe objects. You can find those under the BW Pipes tag, and there are a variety of different elbows in 3 different materials, kind of a rusted iron color, a brass color, and then a colorable version that you can also use. And with all of these pipes, there are a variety of handles, valves, and other connecting pieces so that you can kit bash together any kind of piping infrastructure that your laboratory may need. We also have 4 power line type paths that have different lighting options and levels of density. And then each of those have a corresponding crisp shadow path that you can use. Or you can opt to use one of the free Baileywiki Shadows paths if you want to have a softer look for your shadows. This can be found directly below the pipes, and these are great for adding additional infrastructure to your more scientific or steampunk style maps. No laboratory is complete without some gears and mechanisms, so there are gears in a brass color and also colorable, and there's a chain path that you can use for creating your different contraptions within your lab. And there's an examination table that is available in 2 static variants and 3 colorable variants, as well as all of the constituent parts for it, and a couple of overlays that you can use to add blood or some other kind of fluid directly on top of your exam tables. And time flies when you're experimenting, so there are a variety of timekeeping devices now available for you to keep track of just how long you've spent down in the lab. We have stone and wooden sundials available in static versions and colorable, and then we have wall clocks here that you can have in component pieces and perhaps combine them with other assets to kit bash in signs, etc. These are available in both a perspective view and a top-down view. Similarly, we have a larger, more druidic style clock or perhaps magical timekeeping device that has perspective version, including with some new leather pieces, which you can also use separately, and a top-down version for your maps. Finally, we've been talking about the lab quite a bit, and what lab is complete without some experiments. So here are some tank pieces for you to use for housing the different experiments that are going on in your BBEG's evil layer. There are tanks in both a kind of rusted iron look and a brass look with colorable versions for both textures, and then a variety of components for the tops. We really love how these came out, and they're just absolutely gorgeous to work with. These are also available without the framing under the new Kitbash Materials glass tag, as you can use these just as well for some skylights as you can for some experiment tanks. We have some liquid goo that you can use to fill the tanks, and other pieces to modify the tanks. We also have our very first collection of tokens. So we have 5 top-down tokens here for different experiments. You can see some kind of bone or ossified dark elf, a lizard folk, merfolk, some unknown creature, and a werewolf. And here you can see some assembled tanks in action. Each of these have the goo placed on top, and you can see the colorable version of the goo works really well for creating a variety of effects. We really like how these turned out, and we're eager to hear your thoughts on them. So let us know how you're using these and what you like about them. That's it for this month's update to the Baileywiki Assets APAC. You can find all of these in their respective tags that have been shown on screen. And as a quick recap, you can find most of these under the BW Laboratory tag. You can also find the new Kitbash Mats glass tag, the Clocks and Sundials tag, Paintings and Frames tag, and the Pipes tag if you need to find any of the other pieces.
So that's it. I hope you all love playing with these new toys. Let us know in the comments if something in particular piqued your interest, and also if you have any suggestions for like directions that you'd like us to take in any of these design areas. And in the meantime, thank you all sincerely for your support, and have fun making your maps.